Welcome to Grounds for Conversations. I'm Amber Noble. It's difficult to find common ground when we focus on things we disagree about. But if we take a step back, we realize that we all have things to learn. Grounds for Conversations is a podcast where we dive into a conversation about Scripture, looking at the story in its entirety. This is for the believer, the questioner, the invested, and the searching. I invite you to join the conversation. Also, at the end of this podcast, stick around for an extra shot, a conversation where we discuss everything about nothing. Welcome back to Grounds for Conversations. My name is Amber Noble, and I am excited once again to have my good friend Jason Mauck back in Texas.
It's good to be back.
Yeah.
Even if it's for a short trip, it's good to be back.
I know. Okay, so first let me just say, as a true Texan,
okay,
I know that there are a lot of Texans that, people from Texas that do not understand why anybody would leave this state. They're like, God called you, so what? Like, yes. Texas or die, you know? What? So tell us a little bit. You guys, y'all were here. For those of you who've not heard the previous podcast or don't know, Jason Mauck, we served on staff at a church together. Yes. And God called you and Kendra to move to where? Tell us where you're at.
We are in Hallsville, Missouri, just north of Columbia, where Mizzou is at. Whoop, whoop, go Tigers. Anyway, I know, Missouri, Mississippi State, like we're kind of somewhere.
That's just where our money went.
Yeah.
You know? That's it.
And so we're in Hallsville, and we've gone to plant a church. And really, we've kind of gone into this thing with two hearts. And we have a heart to plant a church. And be a church, really, our name entitles it all, Generations Cowboy Church. And we want to be a church that's leading generations to experience Jesus, because we just have this heart to make sure that what Jesus has done in our life gets passed on to the next generation.
Sure.
And then we have a heart for the rural parts of Missouri, because we recognize there's a lot of ministers that are stepping out of ministry because they're getting older.
Yeah.
And there's not a flood of people stepping back into that space. And so we want to find a way to come alongside some of these churches, support them, help them, partner with them, whatever that might look like, to make sure that there's somebody there that can keep that church going and make sure that community gets a good representation of the gospel message of Jesus around them.
I love that. Okay, so you and Kendra, though, are from Missouri.
We are from Missouri originally. We are Missouri, Midwesterner. And so this fall, when the leaves started turning orange and red and purple and all the colors, like it was, okay, like this is the way fall is supposed to be.
Okay, so I'm going to throw you under the bus a little bit right here. You guys moved from Texas to Missouri in June, right?
Yes, we did.
Okay. We had probably the worst summer of our lives, heat-wise here.
I saw.
Nobody in the whole United States had rain, right?
Nope.
But here in South Texas, it was like walking outside into a bottle of boiling glue.
That sounds terrible.
It was terrible. It was awful.
But the air is that thick down here. That's what we do not miss.
So humid, and it was so thick and so hot and so sticky. And I'm just like, I can't breathe.
No.
And it was awful. And I'm just trying to go, you know what? If I say it's hot, that's just, let's not state the obvious. Let's look for the best in things. And then I start getting these texts from you and Kendra.
Because we love you so much.
You're sitting outside in a hoodie by a fire pit. And I'm like, really? Well, if we lit a fire, we would die. And it was just
it might even be cooler if you lit a fire than what the rest of it was outside.
Sitting in the fire would have been cooler than walking outside. Fact. But you were like, it's 50 degrees tonight. And I'm like, really? Our cold water doesn't get below 50 degrees. Yeah, so it's hot. So I really didn't like the rubbing it in my face that y'all were.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, it was kind of chilly tonight. We had to put on a hoodie. And I'm like, oh, well, everybody got saved in Texas because nobody wants to spend eternity like
that's what it's like. It probably felt like the devil's bedroom outside when you guys went outside. Like that's what it's like when he goes to sit down at night and take a nap. Like it feels like that in his room. It's got to be terrible.
Does the devil sleep?
I don't know. Does he?
No, probably not. Because it's too hot. That's the worst.
Oh, it's terrible.
And you know what? I did this. I learned this trick when I was in Haiti. From a nurse that was like I don't know, she was like 65. It was right after the earthquake. She was like, honey, let me tell you what I do. You know those things in the first aid kits?
Yeah.
That you break? It's like an instant ice pack.
Oh, yeah.
You can buy just boxes of those from like CVS or Walgreens or whatever.
Sure.
So I was going to Haiti a lot, and I started buying those. And what you do, because the water's cold, you take your cold shower at night, and then you break a bunch of those, and you put them all over yourself until you go to sleep.
Ooh,
and
that's a great
I
idea.
was tempted, living in the United States,
to go buy some.
To go buy those to get through summer of 2023. It was awful.
Try it next year and tell me how it goes.
How about we just pray that next year is not like, oh my God. Like, I didn't go outside.
Yeah, I wouldn't have wanted to either.
They're like, your mailbox is full. I'm like, and?
And it's melting a little bit too because
I'll pay you $20 if you'll bring it all to my front door. You know, I'm not leaving. It's awful.
Send me your Venmo. I'll pay you. Man. I can do it right here from the front door.
I see you in those little polyester shorts, mail lady.
Gosh.
Come on, bring them on up here.
Terrible.
Yes. Can you imagine working?
Being a mailman in that? No.
I know. Okay. So you're here.
Yes, ma'am.
This weekend. You spoke at a church. You are doing a podcast with me today, and I'm excited to talk about what we're going to talk about. The good thing is we just have a topic.
Yeah.
And we've not discussed it with each other. We both have opinions, and not just opinions. We both have studied this out and really, I'll tell you this, when you told me what you were like, hey, what do you think about this? It was one of the few things that I'm like, dude, I'm very intrigued about this, because I was like, what do I think?
I know.
I've never even asked myself, well, the whole thing was, is God fair?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, wait, no, I don't, is he? I don't know. Like,
and how do I feel about it?
And and so so after we talked, I'm like, okay, first of all, what is the true definition of fair? And then what's my definition of fair? Because if we're honest, there's a lot of definitions that we have modified, especially in the Western world, right? That we've modified and we've made our own.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure you've got your definition ready. Let's talk a little bit about that. What is old Webster?
Oh, Mr. Webster.
Yes. Okay. Did you know that I know a lady that looks like Noah Webster?
I have heard this story, and I've seen the picture, and I can see the semblance.
Yeah.
You are on point with that one. I will give you that.
I think that they are long lost relatives.
So if you're watching this or listening to this, do yourself a favor and go Google Mr. Webster and look at the picture that pops up, and then you can think
I know
about
a lady that looks just like that.
Yeah, I know. And
he was probably a wonderful man.
He probably was.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe a little dry since he wrote a dictionary.
He wrote a dictionary.
But he was probably still a wonderful man.
Can you imagine hanging out with Noah Webster and you're like, hey, can you grab that whatever? And he's like, well, do you know what that's from and the origin? It's like, hey, can you leave?
Yeah, go man.
Outside in the humidity of Houston. Go on out. Go out there and get stuck.
Done. Run. Get out of here, man. Go.
Go get my mail. No. Okay, so what did you see as the definition?
Webster says that to be fair is to be impartial and just, to be without favoritism and discrimination.
Right.
And so if you take that definition as Webster says it, I mean, I think about it from a couple angles. Like one is that the way I define fair, because I think that like you said, I think we've built some definitions of what fair is that don't fit here.
Well, let's talk about some of those definitions.
Oh, okay. Like I can think about, I've seen moments with little kids where we'll say, it's not fair. He got 5 M&Ms. I only got 2 M&Ms. That's not fair. I should get 5 M&Ms too. Right. And so, I mean, we want.
I was that way as a kid. We counted those bad boys out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But that also, to me, if we're going to be impartial and just and without favoritism or discrimination, then that also means there would be moments where I wouldn't get what everybody else's get because somebody else didn't get that too.
Right.
Like that pendulum of fairness, according to that definition, swings both way. Not just when I get something, but if somebody else doesn't have anything, then you should take this away from me and give it to that person.
Well, and in all fairness, I see what I did there. In all fairness, you didn't deserve any of those M&Ms. It was a gift. Right? Like you think about that. It is. My parents, when we were traveling, they would stop and M&M's perfect example, Skittles. I bought you and your sister this bag to share.
Yeah.
It was a gift. That was not something we earned.
Nope.
It was not something that, it was like, well, I didn't ask to be born. You owe me M&Ms, you know? Which that might be a great t-shirt. I don't know. But, you know, like it was a gift. So whether we got one M&M or we got a family bag to share, like that was not something that I earned.
Nope.
But what happens is because, and maybe it's because we do live in this culture.
Yeah.
We start expecting.
We feel entitled. We feel owed. And to me, that's where the idea of fairness, it really starts rubbing me the wrong way.
Okay.
Is because I do think that we've allowed that part of fairness to creep into us where we start to feel entitled and owed something.
Right.
Because this idea of fair that we have, you owe me this because that's what makes it fair. Right. Instead of a gift that somebody's tried to give to me and just getting to enjoy it for what it is, now we start to feel like, man, you actually owe me something here because that would be the fair thing to do.
Right. So where do we get off? It's so like this has been kind of a, you know, that holy fear that I never thought about it like this. How we so quickly are, well, God's not fair. That's not fair. Or why did this happen? And if God loved me, I wouldn't, we wouldn't have had this house fire, or we wouldn't have had cancer in our family, or my marriage wouldn't have failed, or my kids wouldn't be feral, or, whatever excuse you want to put on God. Your kids are feral, by the way, because you don't parent them.
That's true.
Okay.
I mean, let's be honest. That's a parenting problem, not God's problem.
Thank you for joining this podcast.
You're welcome. We'll give you some parenting advice later on if you want. Tell your kid no every now and then.
No, it's a great. You're bilingual.
Yes.
It's same in English and Spanish. That's great.
Yes.
So when I started thinking about this of, is God fair? I got, I'm going to be really transparent here. I got super convicted and really had to start repenting of times that I was angry that God didn't do something for me because I thought he owed me, when reality is God doesn't even owe me the next breath.
Nope.
Everything that he's already done is more than I deserve. And I think we need to sit in that for a minute.
Oh, I agree. Because I kind of had one of those moments in my life where I went through 3 years of medical issues.
Right.
And I was...
So talk about that, because I know that testimony, and I think a lot of people don't.
Sure.
And people that know you well know that you're a runner. Not like you run from things. It's like, well, Jason didn't pay that bill.
I'm on the road again, man.
But you sign up for marathons. Yeah. On purpose.
Absolutely. On purpose, intentionally, for the whole thing. And part of that for me is because I went through 3 years of medical issues to the point where I had to walk with a cane. I couldn't stand for more than 5 minutes. And sometimes my legs would get so tired and weak that I would just fall down. And I was in my early 30s while all this was happening.
And there was it wasn't like, oh, well, this is this. There was no diagnosis.
No, it was 3 trips to the Mayo Clinic in 3 years, seeing the best of the doctors and leaving them baffled as to what was happening inside of me. And so, I mean, long story short, God healed me. And it was a really cool story of how he did it.
Hold on, though. He didn't heal you instantly.
Nope, 3 years.
I think that's...
And that's where I learned what you just said.
Right.
Because I had those moments, if I'm honest, where I wrestled with God. And then I wrestled with a lot of things because I'm in ministry doing your work, God. These were my conversations with him. Yeah. I'm doing what you called me to do.
Right.
And you're letting me go through this. That's not fair.
Right.
I mean, as a pastor, you can take whatever. I mean, if you just want the real raw, what prayer looks like in conversations with God sometimes, that was it.
Yeah.
I mean, that was about as real and raw as I could get. Moments where I was frustrated and upset and angry because, God, this isn't fair. You called me to this. I'm doing your work. If anybody shouldn't have to deal with something like that, it should be me.
Yeah.
And God had to break that out of me.
Yeah.
in those 3 years. And I had to do a lot of repenting and a lot of times having to think about, man, this idea of fairness doesn't fit my situation now all of a sudden. And so I think that season was one that was good for me because God was able to purify that part out of my life so that I would stop having this expectation for God to be fair and see him be faithful instead. And recognize I can go through something bad and God is still a loving, just God taking care of me all at the same time. And I had to wrestle with that in real time about what that looked like.
Well, don't you think some of that, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too far, but some of that is we have some pretty warped theology on, I mean, some people call it the prosperity gospel, whatever, but it's like, if I do this, God will do this. And I think we have to go ahead and just say, I understand there is sowing and reaping, and there are things that are very biblical, that there's a reason that God says, you do this, I'll do this. That is very much a biblical thing. But I think we've taken it so far out of context. We're like, if I do this, these things will happen. If I do this, this kind of stuff will happen. And the reality is God's goodness and his blessing in our life is not contingent on anything we do. He's good, period. And scripture says that how does it read? It falls on the just and unjust.
The rain. Yeah.
The rain falls on the, I was like, falls, rains. Yeah. Why do good things happen to bad people? Why do bad things happen to good people? Because it happens to all of us.
Every one of us are going to experience.
Now there's a Christmas card, right?
Yeah, right. Nobody wants that Hallmark card. I don't think they're going to pay you or me if we try, hey, guess what, man? Life's going to be hard and you're going to go through some bad things, but guess what? Everybody does.
Merry Christmas.
Get well soon. Merry Christmas. I don't think anybody's signing up to buy that card from us.
But that's real life and that's real talk.
And it's real God, to be honest with you. Like for us, I think that's where we have to wrestle with, how can I get a cancer diagnosis and still wrestle with the fact that God is still good and he loves me?
Ooh.
Because he can be both those things at the exact same time. Yeah. We can have these experiences that are not good, and yet God is still good and he still loves me and cares for me, even while these things are happening. Mm-hmm. That it's not one or the other, that it's actually those two things at work at the same time.
Right.
And if you read the Bible at all, Job, the perfect story of somebody who was more faithful than anybody on earth at that time.
More than anyone. And yet he still faced hard things. And so did that change anything about who God was in the process? No. And did it, at the end of the day, did it change the way Job worshiped God and continued to be faithful for him towards the end? No. And so I think those are the stories in scripture that most of us want to skip past, because we do want the prosperity piece, the name it, claim it. Hey, if I do this, God, you have to do this for me. And guess what? Who becomes God in that moment? We do.
Instead of God, we do.
Exactly. And what about, I love that you brought up Job, because that was the thing where I went when you threw out this idea. I cannot imagine, there's been so many times in my life, like I said, I went through this whole Lord, I've got to repent about some things, where nothing I faced was anything like what Job faced.
Nope.
And yet he stayed steady. And so and again, I don't want to make this a political thing, but I look at where our world's going, and what happens to the majority of Christians when our boat gets rocked? What's going to happen? Let's say it that way. And to me, that kind of makes me nervous, because what we call persecution, other parts of the world call Tuesday.
Oh, it's part of their everyday life. Exactly. And it's not even a bad day for them. No. That's actually maybe a better day in the week for them.
We get mad when we pull up to church and there's not a parking spot.
Or the worship person doesn't sing a song that we actually like during worship.
Right.
Or, there's so many things that we mess up when it comes to what it looks like to be the part of church and not get offended in the process.
Right. And so we use that, going back to that phrase, fair. I told you that in this process, I was reading this article just about how, and basically the author of the article said, God is not fair, but he is just. And I was like, yeah, he is, because his judgments are always right and true.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he's given a standard that this is the standard in which I will always operate.
Yeah.
And scripture says he's not a man that he should lie.
Mm-hmm.
So God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He operates the same across the board. And so he's just.
Yeah.
But to say God's fair means that there's an absence of mercy and grace.
Yep.
Because if he was fair, I would be dead right now.
Because why? That's what justice would demand.
That's
of us.
what I deserve.
That's what we deserve. That's what I'm
fair.
owed, and
Right.
I have entitled and coming to me.
Right. Right. Now, if I go work, if we make an agreement and you're like, I'm going to pay you $25 an hour to do this job, and I work 4 hours, it is fair for me to walk away with $100 in my pocket.
Absolutely.
But if you say, I'm going to pay you $25 an hour to do this job, and I'm going to pay you $50 an hour to do this job, and I agreed to the 25, and we walk away, and I've got 100, and this other person's got 200, and I'm like, that's not fair. Why is that not fair?
Why? That's the point for me. Why is that not fair? You agreed to it. Right. It was the terms you agreed to. You were fine with it.
Right.
And so because it's not fair, what does that begin to do inside of you?
We begin to resent God. We begin to question his goodness.
We get offended.
We begin to compare. Everything's comparison.
And so where does all that come from? That's why, to me, that's where I felt like I began to wrestle. Resentment, comparison, bitterness, offense. Where does all of that root itself in? Is that from God?
No. I mean, what's the quote? Comparison is the thief
of joy or something like that.
Something like that.
All of those things are not from him. And that's where I begin to wrestle with, man, if those things are not from him, then maybe we should wrestle a little bit more about what this idea of fair really is and where God fits into it. Because that's not the fruit that comes from somebody who is walking with him.
Right. I just think that we have to recognize that the way I think people, how do I say this? People who desire God to be fair don't take sin very serious.
No.
And I mean, would you agree with that?
Oh, totally agree with you 100%.
Because if we took sin serious, we'd please don't be fair.
Please don't be fair.
Please don't be fair. Please be merciful.
Yep.
Please be just. And I also, and this is a little different, and I don't know, but I think we've got to do better at celebrating other people's wins.
Oh, for sure.
And when we can learn to celebrate other people's wins and successes, and, I used to, bumper stickers, my kid made the honor roll. First of all, good. Let me just say this, and this is no jab at anybody who has that bumper sticker. If your kid making the honor roll is special enough to you that you will put a sticker on your car, that's your big celebration.
Yeah.
Let them celebrate it, man.
Celebrate away.
If I'm going to put a sticker on my car, it's got to be a lot bit more than my kid making an A, right? It's they made an A, you know? I would say my kid didn't go to jail. But
it is.
Having people in your life celebrate you, we want that, but we've got to do better doing that for other people.
We do. And to me, I think the perfect example of this, I just saw this on Instagram on a reel somewhere this past week. Kendra and I were talking about it. It was a picture of Jason Kelsey.
Yeah.
Busting out of their suite with his shirt off.
Right.
Celebrating when his brother scored a touchdown. It said, have people like Jason Kelsey in your corner that celebrate you when you do something good.
Right.
And I'm like, that's who I want to be.
Yes.
I just want to celebrate in a way that I don't care what people think. I don't care if it makes me not as good as you. You did something good, and I just want to go crazy and celebrate you for it.
So thinking about that, taking that whole these football brothers,
Yep.
in putting that into perspective of the fairness of God, when we celebrate other people, we stop looking at what do I deserve?
What's fair?
What's
what am
fair?
I owed? What am I entitled
It's
to?
just like when you can say, wow, look at what God did there.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it is a good reminder of, well, then he's capable of doing it in
Yeah,
my life,
it is.
whether I deserve it or not.
Mm-hmm.
If God can heal this person,
Yep.
he's capable of healing me.
Yeah.
Now, what if he doesn't heal me? Does that mean he's not fair? No,
Does that mean he loves you any less?
absolutely not.
Does that mean you're still any less of a daughter or son to him?
No. And you know what? I think that that's where people wrestle. They're like, well, why would he do it for this person and not me?
Yep.
And there's some of those whys that you're never going to have the answer to.
Because we're not God.
Right. And honestly, he heals everybody. Sometimes it's on this side of eternity.
Yep.
And sometimes it's when we get our glorified body. And we
You're
don't like
healed or
that
healed,
answer.
no matter what. We don't like that answer, but
No.
it's the truth because we get stuck in this finite moment of time and forget that we're created for an infinite moment of time.
Right.
And so when I can think about family members that I've lost, my grandma to cancer, my grandma got healed. She's healed now. She's
Right.
healthy. She's whole. She's living her best life now,
Yeah,
literally.
exactly.
And she still got healed. It just didn't happen on this side of eternity.
Right.
It happened on the other side of eternity.
Well, and when we get to eternity, we're going to realize that this side was nowhere as significant as that side.
Nope.
This side, our whole purpose on this side is to get as many people
Yeah.
as we can to
Mhm.
go with us to that
Yeah.
side. And we forget that.
We do.
And I mean, there's nothing wrong with having nice things and going on
No.
vacations and all that, but that's what we get wrapped up in. That's where, and then we're like, well, it's not fair because God, I asked you and you are this, and you did this for this person, and your word says, we even use God's word against him
Sure.
to justify what we feel like we are owed. But the truth is, if fairness in old Webster's dictionary means what it means, then I don't really want God to ever be fair with me.
Not at all. And when we pocket pick those pieces of scripture that we like, that we feel like God didn't honor, we skip over a whole lot
Right.
of other pieces
Right.
that show the other side of that coin that we just choose to forget about because I don't necessarily like that part of the story. And so I just want this side of the coin, not the other side.
Yes. Like that, the verse where people always want to start it with the part where it says, I'm going to say it wrong. After this, I will pour out my spirit on all flesh.
Yes.
And they're like, oh, yes, this is what I want from God.
Yeah.
And what is it? Joel 2.
Yep.
Joel 2:28. Let me just tell you this.
Go for it.
This is, to me, this is the great example of when people they're like, I want this from God. I
Yep.
want what God is doing here. I want to experience this promise or whatever. In Joel 2:28, it says, and afterward, I will pour out my spirit on all people. Your sons and your daughters will prophesy. Your old men will dream dreams, and your young men will see visions. I will pour out my spirit in those days. I will show wonders in the heavens and on earth, blood and fire and billows of smoke. The sun, and it goes through this whole
Yep.
thing, and people are like, yes,
That's right.
yes.
Yeah.
But what they don't understand is it starts off with after this. What happened before this? You back up and you see this whole thing where it's like this army of locusts.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
all this.
Eating everything.
It's just awful. We don't want to talk about the locusts.
No.
We don't want to talk about things being destroyed. We don't want to experience that.
Yeah.
We want, and after this, I
Yep.
will pour out my spirit.
Mhm.
So that is one example of like 9 gabillion,
It
right?
is.
In scripture where we're like, oh, this is my verse for the year. Cool. What about the chapter?
What about the whole context of
Right.
what's happening there around
let's
it?
look at what's happening right here because we want the goodness of God. But let's be honest. When you look at all the things that God did that was good, it's like, look, God delivered them.
Yeah.
Well, the deliverance was a result of something because of something awful that had happened.
Yeah.
And most of the time it was because they disobeyed God.
Sure.
And they got, God, it says, what did scripture say? And God turned them over to themselves.
Yep.
So their
back in slavery or they're back in this situation and they're caught up in all this Baal worship or whatever. And it's like, and then they realized, oh, we've done this to ourselves. God heal us.
Yeah.
God set us free. God hear our prayer. And it said, and God turned his ear to them.
Yep.
And once again, like you see those phrases, and once again, but we see the delivery, the hand of God, but we don't see why it was there.
Yeah.
And the fairness in those stories is for God to say, you brought this on yourself.
Yeah. Good luck with it. Have fun with this, Sorry.
How's Bill working out for you,
Yeah.
Sorry that they keep sacrificing your children.
Yeah.
That's fair.
It's fair. And what if in the middle of that story where we choose to get offended because things didn't go the way I wanted,
right?
It is actually, to me, a picture of, God's loving grace.
Right.
Because he didn't leave them in that mess and he turned them over to their desires. And why would God do that? Because he knew somewhere along the way, if I give them what they want, they'll hit a point, they'll realize they don't really want that. And then they'll come back to me.
Right.
And what if that's what it took to get a person to a place where they would repent and come back to him?
Right.
Now is that loving and good for God to do something like that so that they would get to a place that they would come back to him and want to serve him and follow him.
Yeah.
And that's the bigger question that most of us wrestle with, because God just make it easy for me and keep me on this road. But what if God has to allow some of those things for us to experience some of those things in life so that we will get to a place that we realize I've got to let these things go because there's something better here. And God doesn't stand there in that moment and say, nope, what you deserve is this. You get to keep it. He actually turns his ear to them. He forgives them. He heals them. He restores them. He brings them back in and sets them free. And so that's the part about,
which is mercy and grace, not fairness.
Not fairness.
Right.
It's mercy and grace.
I did this just recently. I was studying the book of Jonah, which Jonah is that story that every kid, Bible story, whatever.
We make him sound way better than he really was.
He's kind of a loser, man.
And yet when we tell the Bible story version of that, it never quite gets told that way.
We tell the story about how he was afraid and ran, and then he came back, and then he
a whale swallowed him and saved him.
And then he went and did what God asked him to do. No, he didn't. And
he pouted about it like a freaking baby.
He was the worst. He was the worst. Like, when I get to heaven, he's not going to be somebody I'm like, hey, let's hang out. I'd be like, hey, and just keep walking, right? In Jonah chapter 4, because there's only 4 chapters in Jonah. For those of you who don't know the story, the basic story of Jonah, like God called him to go to Nineveh, and he was, it starts off, the word of the Lord came to Jonah. So we know that Jonah has a relationship with God.
Absolutely.
And then God says, I need you to go to Nineveh. I need you to tell the people this. And Jonah's like, these people are crazy. Not acknowledging that you're the creator of the universe, the breather of stars, and I'm arguing with you right now. And so he's like, okay. And he goes and pays and gets on a boat to head to Tarshish.
Yep.
And
which is the complete opposite direction of where God told him to go.
Yes. And ironically, God's like, do you think I'm stupid? And the storm comes and people are like, where's this coming from? And Jonah's like, well, it's because I'm here. And they're like, get off the boat. They're like, obviously that's paraphrased by Amber.
I like that version.
Thank you. He gets thrown in the water. A whale swallows him, yada, yada. He prays and God's like, okay. 3 days later, he gets spit up. He's on dry land. God's like, okay, we're going to finish what we started.
Redo.
Yeah. Go on to Nineveh. And so the idea that everything that just happened in Jonah's life was complete mercy and grace.
Yeah.
What would have been fair is for that whale to swallow him and digest him.
And he's done.
And he's done.
Jonah's story ends. Or the whale doesn't even come. He throw him in the storm and he just drowns and he dies. And that's the end of Jonah's story. Like, it's over.
It's over. I think whale poop is the
I like
most.
whale poop.
Yes.
I think kids would enjoy that version of the story a little bit more too. Can you imagine a 7-year-old as you tell the story about Jonah and whale poop and how that classroom reacts to you after you have that conversation with 7-year-olds? I got a feeling you're going to hear about the one time their cat pooped in the middle of their living room somewhere.
Right. But see, that didn't happen because God had mercy and grace on Jonah. So Jonah goes to Nineveh. And I don't know, I guess Jonah expected them to reject him, but that's not happened at all.
Nope.
It got to even the king, and the king tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, put ashes on himself, and called for a nationwide fast for even the animals.
Mm-hmm.
And Jonah says to God, I knew you were going to do this. And he says in chapter 4, verse 2, he prayed to the Lord, isn't this what I said, Lord, when I was still at home? That is what I tried to foretell by fleeing to Tarshish. I knew that you are gracious and compassionate, God slow to anger and abounding in love, a God who relents from sending calamity. Now, Lord, take away my life, for it is better for me to die than to live.
He just had a revival of an entire nation, and he's complaining to God for being gracious and compassionate.
Yes.
I just want to die.
Right.
Like, just take my life.
And God's response is not fair, because if it's fair, he would have just zapped him.
You missed the whole point. Just get out of here, Jonah. Go
He says, is it right for you to be angry?
Yeah.
Like you can't. People say, well, the God of the Old Testament is just full of wrath. I'm like, dude, right here, this God is pretty chill.
Pretty patient.
Yeah.
Pretty loving.
Yeah.
Pretty gracious.
Long suffering. Like if that's a thing for God to be, like here it is. And Jonah's like mad still. So he leaves town. He he goes and pouts, like you said.
Yes.
And God's like, okay. And he grows a tree.
Yep.
And Jonah's like, thanks for the shade. Like he's happy. And then God's like, and a worm. Eat the tree.
Eat the tree. There goes your shade.
Which also, if there's a replay in heaven where we can watch that, I want to watch that worm.
I want to see that story kind of from beginning to end. Actually,
Right.
I want to watch that video.
Right.
From the boat to the whale to the worm. The whole thing. I want to see it all.
To the well to the worm. Yes. So he gets mad about it again. And God's like, why are you mad about the tree? You had nothing to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, you care more about that tree and what did he say? There's, you've been concerned about this plant, though you did not tend to it or make it grow. It sprang up overnight and died overnight. Yeah. And you should have concerned, and should I have not concerned for and should I have not concerned for the great city of Nineveh, in which there are more than 120,000 people who cannot tell their left from their right?
Mm-hmm.
And God's like, Jonah, what are you doing? And there's no fairness there.
Not in the entire story.
But I also hate that we all are so much like Jonah.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I can stick myself in Jonah's story. I can think of moments in my life.
They don't deserve this. And why are you showing them compassion? And why are you forgiving them? And why are they getting the second chance? And God's like, you spent 3 days in the belly of a well, joker, and you didn't deserve to get out. Like what?
Yeah.
What are you not getting here?
And that's my beef with fairness to me, is because it puts us in this spot where we end up getting offended or mad or upset that God is allowing this to happen. And it becomes this wedge in our relationship with God instead of a moment for us to grow closer with God.
Right.
Like for Jonah, that whole story and God's grace and compassion and mercy that he was trying to show somebody else, instead of it being a moment that drew him closer to God and impressed him with the grace and the mercy and compassion of who God is, became a wedge that began to separate him from seeing what God was really up to.
Right.
And I mean, to me, that's where I think, man, if we're not careful with the idea of fairness, we inadvertently allow the enemy to use it to drive a wedge between us and God.
Right.
Instead of embracing the grace and mercy of God in this moment, even if I didn't experience it the way this person did.
Right. Absolutely. And then now it leaves me in a place of going, where have I misinterpreted fairness?
Yeah.
To just God's mercy in my life. Like, you want to know what fairness is? There's a lot of fair stories in the Bible.
There are.
Like 2 Kings 2. This was one of Justice's favorite stories when he was little. 23. From there, Elisha went up to Bethel. As he was walking along the road, some boys came out of the town and jeered at him.
This one, yes. Because I have no hair, maybe.
Get out of here, Baldy. They said, get out of here, Baldy. And he turned around and looked at them and called down a curse on them in the name of the Lord. Then 2 she-bears came out of the woods and mauled 42 of the boys. And he went on to Mount Carmel.
He went on.
And it's like, what's fair? Some kids made fun of Elisha.
Yeah.
And he cursed them in the name of the Lord.
Sure.
And 2 she-bears ate them.
Yep.
Like, we can tell these stories all day and giggle.
We can, but here, we say that story is fair because we put ourselves in Elijah's shoes. But let's take that story and let's say one of those 42 kids was your kid, was my kid. Am I going to say that's fair now because my kid didn't really know what they were doing? I mean, they're a kid.
He is bald. He was just stating the fact.
Like, he didn't realize what was really going to happen, and he didn't mean it to hurt him, and
Right.
that wasn't fair. Do you see?
Absolutely. And that's my point, is we can sit here and laugh at these all the time, and then out of the same breath go,
Yep.
It's not fair that this is happening to me. It's not fair that I'm in this situation. It's not fair that our family's going through this. And I challenge you to reevaluate what your definition of fair is, because I promise you, if you're saying that, your definition of fair is not the actual definition of fair.
No.
And it's sure not God's definition of fair.
No, not at all.
And I think we need to get rid of that phrase.
Oh, I'm 100% with you on that. I've told Kendra, we're past the raising kids age, but if I was raising kids right now,
Right.
I would emphatically try to strike the word fair from anything that we ever use in the house. We will not use that word, and that is not the standard that we're going to try to measure anything.
Right.
Because I don't think it produces anything good.
It needs to be right there with every like the extreme words like always or never.
Take fair out.
Yeah, take fair out. It's because the reality is we are so blessed.
We are. Not
way more
because
than we
deserve
deserve.
it.
Well,
Not because we're owed it.
No,
Not because we're
deserving is fair.
Yeah.
And that's, thank God, he's not fair.
I am so thankful that he's not fair. I'm so thankful that he is loving and just at the same time. He is gracious and compassionate. And I think that's where we wrestle with the idea of fairness and justice.
Yes.
Is because we don't have a holy picture in today's world of what holy justice looks like. All we see in our world is what corrupted justice looks like. And so it's hard for us to understand God's picture of justice because all we know is what corrupted justice looks like.
Right.
And so we have a hard time seeing a holy, just God who can be holy and just and loving and gracious all at the same time.
Yeah.
And in today's world, most of the time, for somebody to be just, it ends up coming at somebody else's expense.
Right.
And God says, no, I'm going to be just. I mean, that's the story of Jesus. I'm going to be just, and I'm going to pay the price for that justice all at the same time. And then I'm going to give you that gift of salvation.
Right.
I mean, ugh.
Well, because what is that? Romans 3:23, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Is that Romans 3:23?
Yeah, I think that's right.
All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. That means we all have.
We've all missed the boat.
We've all messed up, and we are all worthy of eternal death.
Yeah. That's justice.
That is justice.
And Jesus said, no, I know what justice is. I know the price has to be paid. So I'll pay the price.
Which is Romans 6:23. For the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord. Like, we just said that. But that's
the gift back in return.
And that's not fair.
It's not fair.
But that's a gift. That is goodness. That goes back to those M&Ms or those Skittles.
Yep.
Like, you don't deserve this.
Yeah.
But I also think, just like our parents did for us, sometimes the God, and this goes to the fact that he's relational. Like, let's just tie a bow on this.
Yeah.
He didn't hand you a bag of M&Ms and me a bag of M&Ms. He handed us a bag and said, share this. This isn't fair. No, it's, I want you to do life together.
Yeah.
And you got to figure this out. And you got to work together. And I think sometimes we think we deserve our own little thing, but when we're on our own, in our own blessings and in his goodness, and it's just us and him, we miss out on the very reason that we're on this earth right now. And that's to do life together.
Yes.
And we need that, you know, there's value. I love that if you go buy candy and instead of him saying king size, it says shareable.
Yes, I do. I love
because it's like, hey, you shouldn't probably eat this by yourself. Some of you will. America.
I will. Guilty. If it's nerd clusters and it's a shareable bag, I might eat the whole bag by myself.
Is that your candy?
Oh my gosh. It's like crack cocaine in a bag, and it's just incredible.
We do not endorse crack cocaine in a bag.
It. I'm just saying.
In a cup, yes, just not in a bag.
It's the clean version. It's the clean version of it.
Right. Well, so the idea that what God gives us is just a gift.
It is.
And I for one, have and will continue to repent for where I thought he owed me something and he owed me nothing.
I want to keep that heart. I want to stay there. Like you said, in a place, I think a good way to measure and gauge it in those moments, like you said, was kind of going back to where you're at, is can I celebrate with somebody when God does something good for them?
Right.
Or do I get upset and offended that he didn't do that for me? Right. I think that's a good place to measure what's going on in my life right now. Yeah. And I'm like you. I want to be able to just repent where I feel offended that God didn't do that for me too. And I can just celebrate. Man, I'm so thankful for God's doing in Amber's life or, Phil's life or whoever that is. And know that, man, God's so good. That story's going to swing around. He's going to do something good in my life.
Well, it should show us that he's still in the business of working miracles and blessing. If you're surrounded by people that God's not doing anything in their life, either God stopped working, which he hasn't, or you're surrounded by the wrong people. Like, surround yourself with people where you see a move of God happening. And if you're like, it's happening in everybody but me, well, then what that should make you do is go, he's still working. He's still moving. And if I keep celebrating them and I keep praising him, I keep celebrating what's to come, even though it hasn't, it's coming. My time's coming.
I'm up next soon.
That's right. It's because he's just.
That's right.
And he's a giver, like he's the giver of good things. If he can give all of Nineveh a second chance, he can do it for us. And he does, and he will, and he already has, y'all. There's not one person listening to this that God has not been good to.
That's right.
Not one.
And, so
if you're like, he's just not been fair, and it's not been, my life has been awful. You get to breathe.
Yeah.
You don't deserve that.
What if the prayer is, man, God, show me where you've been good to me?
Oh, that's
like, think about, if you could just have a 3 to 5 minute moment with God to shut everything off and just say, God, show me where you've been good to me.
Right. What if that's the way we end our day every day from now? Like, there's a challenge.
I love that.
Let's, the rest this year, like, make a habit every night before you go to bed. Not just thank you for the day, thank you for this, but go, God, where have you been good to me today?
Yep.
You know, like, I'm talking the simplest thing. Hayden was so funny. She, the other day, she ordered the 8 count from Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
And there was 10 nuggets in her box.
The favor of the Lord is moving.
But like, you could say, well, God wasn't in that. But you know what? When you celebrate those things, you start seeing God in those things.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah.
When people start looking at, I pulled in the grocery store and I got an up front parking spot. Because you were there at 6 a.m. Like, acknowledge it also. Don't super spiritualize everything. But when you do get a good spot, when it doesn't start raining until you get inside, like, celebrate those things. But if it does rain while you're walking through the parking lot,
celebrate that too. Absolutely.
Because God is not fair.
Yeah.
But he's good.
He is good.
He's good. This has been great.
Oh, I love it, man. Thank you so much for having this
Are you going to stick around
conversation
for an
with me.
extra shot?
I think I will.
Yeah, because you don't have an option.
It's gonna be
great. Okay, Jason, love you. We got to do this
you too,
again.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And we're excited. And for those of you, we'll put information about Jason and Kendra's church in the notes. If you've got questions, if you want to follow along with what they're doing, we encourage you to do that. It's amazing what God is doing in Missouri.
Come on, Missouri. Missouri. If you ask somebody in Missouri, Missouri.
Is that how they say it?
Yeah, Missouri.
Teach them how to talk.
I try, man. I try.
All right. Thank you guys for joining us.
Guys.
All right. Bye.
This podcast is a production of One Loud Voice Ministries. One Loud Voice is a hands-on discipleship initiative. We believe that giving people the opportunity to minister to others and experience God working through them is one of the best ways to grow as a follower of Jesus. One Loud Voice participants get the opportunity to work on a team of adults and students, partnering with churches to reach their communities. If you would like to support our efforts to make disciples and reach the next generation for Christ, please visit our website, oneloudvoice.org. To contact us for speaking engagements or for more information on how you or your church can get involved, please email us at info@oneloudvoice.org.
All right. Welcome back to this extra shot. Jason Mauck. Okay. Are you ready for this topic?
I'm ready. Come on.
The weirdest / craziest things that have happened to you since you've been in ministry.
Okay.
The only rule, don't say names. Because you get to leave, dip, fly back out to Missouri, and then people are going to be like, I have a bone to pick with you. It's like, thank you. Thank you.
I see what you say. Okay. All right. So I'll have to make sure I eliminate anything that could incriminate. Okay. Deal.
Yeah.
Done.
Like if you know somebody that looks like Noah Webster, you can say that, but don't say who that person is.
Just don't say who that person
Yes.
is. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Funniest, craziest, wildest moment.
Weirdest.
I can tell you an embarrassing moment, like right off the bat for me. And this was early on while I was trying to get started in ministry. Somebody was willing to risk giving their platform to a young kid who hadn't done this much. And when I was trying to close out my sermon in prayer, I meant to say the word part, but instead I said the word fart on stage in front of the church, in front of everybody, and had to find a way to recover from that moment as the whole congregation is snickering and laughing as we're trying to close out the message. And it's like, that's the problem when you're stuck in that moment with a microphone in front of people.
You just can't.
You're just.
Well, it's like we talked about that. The guy that was like trying to say that they pitched their tents, and he said to the whole church, he pinched their tits. And what's another one?
The other one was when the guy was trying to say, I've got hope in my soul. And as he got more excited, he said, I've got soap in my hole.
And they're like, you do now. Yes. Okay. So I was speaking at this youth thing, and there was like, I don't know, close to 1,000 kids in the room.
Yeah.
Right. So it was this big event. It was an event night. Everybody bowed their heads. Okay. The stage, I hate that I'm admitting this on like the world. The stage was probably 4 feet off the ground. I'm at the edge of the stage, and I'm giving this altar call. I'm feeling some kind of way. And I've completely forgot that I'm on the edge of the stage, and while everybody's heads are bowed, I fall off the stage and like knocked the wind out of myself. But like, and I think it helped. I think people thought that I was just having a moment with the Lord. Like I stopped talking, and
because you couldn't breathe.
So they're feeling it, and they've got their heads bowed, and they're like nodding their head. I get up and I'm like, okay, I think I'm free and clear, right? The sound guy who hates his life, afterwards was like, I saw you fall. I'm like, stop talking to me. Like, and here's the bad thing. I hit my knee, like I hit one knee and my stomach, right? My knee was so swollen.
The worst.
It was awful. But I'm glad that like, and if there was any kids that were looking, it's like they were whatever. I don't know. But the sound guy had to let me know, I saw you fall. And I'm like, yeah, well, I fell 4 feet. So that's
how could you not see
on my face, right? Like,
yeah.
dude, I hit my knee and like knocked the wind out. Like when I came up, I sounded like I had been smoking. Yeah.
Got that Smokey Weezer voice going on there, man.
People are like, we better get saved because something's going on, So that one was embarrassing in the sense that, yeah.
It just happens. Okay, so like a crazy moment for me. So I'm going to preface this. If any of you on here ever feel like, hey, the Lord is telling me to go pray for somebody. Let me just tell you, you should ask permission of that person before you just start praying for that person. So I am.
Hold on. If God's telling you to pray for them, that doesn't mean that you have to involve them in your prayer. You can sit right there and just pray for them.
Yes.
You don't have to like attack them in Walmart or wherever.
Not at all.
Or the front of the church while they're just trying to walk.
Front of the church is funny that you say that. Because I'm standing in the front of the church in the middle of a worship set that I'm enjoying. Eyes closed, hands raised. Just in this moment of worship.
Oh, they did it during worship.
During worship on the front row.
Come on, man. God didn't tell you to do that. God did not tell you to do that.
Walks up to me.
He didn't.
Gets on his knees. I still don't even know.
He sure did not tell you to do that. He did not.
And puts his...
The devil is a liar. He is
puts his hands on my legs. No. And I'm trying to figure out who's touching me all of a sudden because my eyes are closed and I was in worship.
I would have donkey kicked that man. I would, what would have been amazing is if I would have been standing next to you because I would have been like, okay, what's about to happen?
I mean, it was just like, so
was this during the time of when you were dealing with your sickness? Okay.
Well, and so I understand the nature of I understand the heart behind what he was doing. And the heart, I think, was trying to be genuine and pure, but the way it was executed and played out, one, it scared the bejesus out of me because my eyes are closed and my hands are raised and I'm worshiping. And all of a sudden I feel 2 hands on my legs all at once. And it's like, this is weird. And then
it was weird.
It was weird. And then whatever.
Do you remember what song y'all were singing?
I can't remember anything after the moment other than this is awkward and I don't know what's happening, but this needs to stop right now in Jesus' name. I don't know what to do. So,
dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's weird.
So, I mean, that's the moment. Look, so just if you feel like the Lord is telling you to do this, just ask the person first.
Yeah. Well, the Bible does say lay hands on the sick, but I still think that it is common courtesy is you ask, I want to pray for you.
Yeah.
If somebody says, hey, will you pray for me? I still think you should ask questions before you grab a hold of somebody.
Absolutely. And so there's there's a better way. Like some of the criticism the church gets for being weird and strange is fair because of moments like that.
That right there. Yes.
If I was in the church for the very first time and I happened to see that happening, I mean, all bets are off. I'm turning around and leaving church in the middle of worship after that.
All right. So what I'm about to tell you, this is going to tick some people off, and
I'm okay with it.
I'm here for it.
Send your emails to Amber, idon'tgiverip.com. She'll respond to them when she has time.
It made me so mad. So my friend Natalie and I there was a lady that had come into the States, was going to be speaking. I was super excited about going to hear her. And I think that, if you look at the preachers or the teachers that I listen to, they're all over the place. It's not like, oh, well, these are all very charismatic or whatever. Mm-hmm. I go from 5-point Calvinism to, and I'm a woman, and they're like, what are you listening to? I listen to a lot of different things, right?
Yeah.
And so, and I'm always trying to learn. But I think sometimes when you lean into more of charismatic teaching, I don't know that it's the people teaching that are weird. It's the people that show up for those teachings that are
true.
Weird.
That's a fair point.
And
because then you're stuck managing something versus.
Well, it's sometimes it attracts the freaks.
Yes,
I don't know how else to say that.
I agree with you.
I'm like, I love this teaching. But this person sitting next to me is about to get punched in the face if they do not stop, whatever it is they're doing.
The slap is moving on me right now.
So we go to hear this fantastic. And it was just the Lord was so good. And so much of what God spoke to me a lot during that, just in the teaching. Like I learned a lot during this conference. But there was this man that was, I'm trying really, I can
really see the wheels turning.
Okay.
I'm
trying to be very like
I can tell
diplomatic in the way I say this. This guy was probably 6'5", probably 380.
Okay.
Wearing skinny jeans.
Oh.
Toms.
Oh.
And he was wearing a t-shirt that was not made for big and tall.
Okay.
So he had to keep pulling it down.
Yes.
Because his hairy belly button kept popping out. Okay?
Did it have lint in it?
I don't know. Because what I'm about to tell you, like the fact that I'm even alive to tell the story is a Christmas miracle. Yeah. He was a flag twirler.
Oh, yes.
He had a flag, but it wasn't just kind of like a normal size flag because he wasn't a normal size guy. So he had a flag that like he should have been on like the pole outside of a White House, right? Like there's this huge flag, this big pole. And dude decides that he is going to start. It was like fighting like with a lightsaber, right? He's doing this. Yeah. I don't know how to describe it where people can picture it. I'm showing you, but I know it's like, woo, woo. And he's doing that. He's twirling this flag. I'm 5'3".
Yes.
I am in the middle of worship. There is no weird things happening except for Flag Boy. I want you to understand this was not like one of those. There were no snakes. There were no people flopping around on the floor. It was just a precious time of worship. And I very much appreciate different forms of worship. I love that people can paint, that people do different, whatever. So, but if you're going to be that big of a human with a flag, and I think it's important that you know that he was in skinny jeans because he couldn't move very well. Okay. So he's flailing this flag, but because his shirt is not fitting properly, now it has rolled up on top of his belly. It looks like he's wearing a tube top. And he's, dude hits me in the head.
No.
I wish Natalie was here to be like, yes, it happened.
No.
Hits me in the head.
With it?
The flag.
Oh.
And people thought that like, I fell back into my chair
because you just got whacked.
It wasn't the Lord. It was
with a flagpole in the middle of a worship service.
It hit, and I had a knot on my head, and people were like, "Oh, God's moving on her." No, that wasn't God.
No, it was.
That was Fat Boy Troy over here with his stupid flag
that just whacked you and gave you a concussion.
Seriously, seriously, it was awful.
That sounds.
And Natalie was like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Do you think I'm okay?"
Yeah.
No, I'm not. I'm not happy right now. Yeah. So there you go.
Oh, man. So the other moment where you kind of experience crazy things as ministry is when you step out of America and you go into other cultures on a mission trip somewhere, right? Like you get in one of those spaces where all of the sudden... Like I've been on mission trips and you end up in some of these third world countries where people don't have much and they want to fix you and your team dinner, right? And so
which is precious.
And I am so thankful. And because of that, in those moments, you eat what's put in front of you. Like
you should. If you don't want to offend them, you should.
If you don't want to offend them, because man, they have made a big sacrifice.
Right.
To do what they've done for you. And so I was on a mission trip one time with the
Where
team.
were you at?
We were in Honduras on this trip.
Okay.
And so we had flown into Tegucigalpa and then went up from there.
Scariest airport in the world.
I'm telling you, man, if you've ever flown, it's literally...
They just drop out of the sky and you hope it works.
Bam, and there's airplane wing scrapes on the mountainside coming into that airport.
Do you know that you have to have, as a pilot, have to have special training for that specific airport?
Oh, I believe it. Totally believe it.
People don't understand if they've flown into San Pedro Sula.
No.
But you fly into Tegucigalpa, they're braking mid-sky, hoping that it works.
It is not the flight that the brand new person who's just breaking in for the first time goes to fly and land in.
Dude, you can be a pilot for 50 years if you've not been trained on that. I don't want on your flight.
I don't either, man. It was that landing.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, man, that'll make you pucker like nothing else when you fly into Tegucigalpa. I'm just telling you, man. I'm telling you.
Yes. Yes.
Man.
And so you flew into Tegucigalpa.
I already had that experience enough if you want to say yes to missions work, which you should. I love it. It's life-changing.
Yes.
So don't let these stories discourage you. Just let them mentally prepare you for what you're about to experience.
And maybe look for other airports.
Yes. And so this sweet church had fixed a meal for us, and it was bowls of some kind of chicken soup.
Uh-huh.
And so we're going to town. We're hungry. We had worked all day.
Right.
We were building a church. You know, we've been carrying cement blocks and all that kind of hard work. Like we were hungry, and I'm going to town on my chicken soup. And all of a sudden I see the guy next to me. He's trying to go down on his chicken soup, and he's ready and he's hungry. And one spoonful comes up, and there's the foot of the chicken.
Yeah.
You knew what was coming, right? Because they cook it all.
They cook it. They're not going to waste it.
They're not wasting any of it.
Look, there's certain grocery stores in Houston. You can go in there and buy some chicken feet if you want them.
I know. I've seen.
I don't want them.
I don't understand the appeal or what is inside of there.
I gotta pick my teeth. I'm gonna use this chicken foot
to get the chicken out from between my. And so, in that moment, deep down inside, I just got to be honest. So the Lord, I said, "Thank you, Jesus, that was not my bowl of chicken soup," because that man was stuck in this moment trying to figure out what to do with my bowl of soup. Now that I just pulled out this chicken's foot, and I know what these people have done to try to honor us,
right,
and be thankful for us being there to do what we were doing. And so, ma'am, that's
what we always. So if you're taking a team on missions, and this is your first time to do this, or you've done this a few times, and you're not working with an organization, I highly recommend hiring a cook team there, that they use filtered water. And so that way, when a church says, we want to bless you, you could say, we've already hired a team to do this, but we would love for your staff to come be part of our meal.
Absolutely.
And then you invite them into a meal with you, but it's something that you've prepared and it's not dishonoring them.
Absolutely.
We had a situation where where a church we had been doing work with them all week, and they wanted to prepare a meal for us. And they were like, oh, they're North Americans. They would like hamburgers. And I do missions training where it's like, look, if they put a frog in front of your face, you eat that thing. Like,
you find a way to choke that thing down, man.
But I also know that I've always taken teenagers and young adults, and I'm like, well, look, I'm going to do my very best to make sure that these kids don't catch some kind of crazy whatever. Well, this particular church, they were really awesome, but they wanted to cook hamburgers, which is fine.
Sure.
Kids were so excited about hamburgers. You could smell that the meat was not good. Yeah. It was rancid. And I knew we were about to have a whole bunch of, not just because the locals would have gotten sick. Yeah. Okay.
Like it was not bad. Good. It was bad.
And so I have this trick in my sleeve. This is
guys,
a freebie.
Start taking notes right now. This is a free one.
When you travel, you always take Ziploc bags with you. And what I did was I keep them in my backpack, and I double Ziploc bag. And what I did was I passed my backpack around, and kids would slowly tuck their burger down in the Ziploc bag in my backpack. And they just tore up the fries and everything else. And the church was so excited that everybody could. So I get back to the hotel where we're staying, and I've got these double, like, gallon-sized Ziploc bags of rancid hamburger meat. But you know what? No one in that church ever got offended, because they did not. We left nothing. We left nothing behind. So just know that you don't ever turn your nose up, but carry a Ziploc.
Hey, man, throw one in the bag.
Yeah, and you know what? Don't skimp on your Ziploc bags. You can need one that locks in the freshness. Make sure it's got the zipper, because you don't want that mess leaking in your backpack either.
And if you're going on a mission trip, a lifesaver to always pack around. This was kind of like been our go-to. Take a box or two of Pop-Tarts with you.
Yeah.
If you need something
should always,
to eat, any stuff like that you can throw along with you as you go, man, it's a game changer.
Well, if you're going to Central or South America, you're going to have amazing tortillas available to you.
You are.
You take a thing of peanut butter.
Yeah.
Because here's the other thing, because most of the time you're working in the day and it's so hot. And by the time you're really hungry, dinner's over.
Sure.
And so especially when you have teenage boys, I kept peanut butter and we would have the ladies make extra tortillas.
Yeah.
And sure enough, about 8 o'clock at night, they're
They all
like, dude,
come out,
I'm
they're hungry,
starving.
right? Yeah.
And so we'd slap peanut butter on tortillas.
Yeah.
But yeah, so keep Ziploc bags. But yes, that's weird. That's a weird feeling. You know what I think? Another one is whenever you preach a message or you share and people want to come and re-preach your message to you.
Ooh. The whole thing.
And how it related to them and how they already knew it. And you're like, okay, so next service, why don't you just take it and I'll go get a coffee.
Yeah, you take this one. I'll sit on the front row and I'll let you have it here.
Yeah.
But then some of the conversations that you have with people in those moments when they get down there too, and the things that they will say to you, you got to realize in those moments, it's so hard to have a poker face in that moment with some of the things that come out of people's mouths.
Yes.
And trying to find a way to be kind and compassionate. But at the same time, what you just said is certifiably crazy.
You can, and you know what? You can ask for prayer and say, I need prayer for this without going into all the details of what's happening with that.
Yes. If you want prayer for your hemorrhoids, you don't have to say, hey, will you?
And this is what it looks like. And I grabbed a mirror and it's like, whoa.
And people are like, that doesn't really happen.
It happens all the time.
We get details from doctors' visits that are way overshared.
Worse. I've seen pictures.
No.
You have too. You have too.
I can do you one better than pictures. And this one involves my own grandfather. And the youth pastor from the church that my grandpa was at. My grandpa had to have hip surgery, had to have hip replacement. And I was good friends with the youth pastor, and he's a friend of my wife and I. And he goes in to see my grandpa after hip surgery. And for whatever reason, my grandpa felt the need to pull back the gown that he was in.
Oh, my.
And show the youth pastor the hip surgery.
So this youth pastor was probably what, like 20?
He was in his 20s.
Less.
And he got a view of my grandfather's hip that had just
and
been,
other things.
Because he was only in a gown.
Right.
And I'm just thinking,
right.
Oh, there's just some things you don't have to show.
No.
I'll take your word for it, and I can still pray with you, and I can still pray for you, and I don't have to see it for my prayer to still be effective, right?
And guess what? God sees it.
He sees,
how about that?
He already knows.
He's the only one that's going to heal you. He sees it. So I don't even just... I think that the picture thing, I had somebody come up between multiple services. They came up between two of them. Will you pray for this? Yes. I had, same thing. I had surgery. The incision has gotten infected. Okay. You don't have to tell me anything more.
Done.
Before I can say anything, the picture's in my face and I have such a weak stomach.
You do.
And I'm like, and everything in me was like, I don't want to pray for you. I want to throw up on you right now. I don't.
I'm just trying to fight back vomit. I don't know how I'm going to pray for you.
And it was gnarly.
Oh.
I'm like, you shouldn't be here right now. And then they proceeded to talk about how it stunk. And I'm like, the last person that you should be asking for prayer right now is me because I can't handle this.
How about you just say, hey, I've had surgery and I need prayer for something going on. It is okay to be simple in some of those details.
Yeah.
And just let the Lord fill in the gaps.
Yes. What about the people that that on Facebook will write unspoken prayer request?
Yes.
And then in the comments, spill the tea.
The whole story.
And you're like, it wasn't unspoken. You
were looking for your foot in the door to tell the story.
Unspoken prayer requests. People are like praying. Yes. And it's like, well, what had happened was, and you're like, whoa, there it is.
Not so unspoken no more, is it, man? Oh.
Yes.
Those are the moments that it's just like the Lord, he's good. He'll figure out that stuff. Right. He knows all things. It's okay.
So I was not in ministry, but this happened at church. There was a family in our church, mom, dad, 2 kids. Okay. Mm-hmm. This is back in the day on the Sunday night when you had Sunday night services, and a lot of times you would have like singings or like testimony time, which is the most dangerous thing in the world is testimony time.
Especially if you let go of the microphone as a pastor.
Facts. And if your sound guy could care less. Like he's just like, I ain't muting it, like whatever. And this is back in the day when the microphones had those fuzzy things on top of them.
The worst, because it would hold everybody's nasty breath when they didn't brush their teeth or the coffee they drank. Whoever invented those, please.
Yeah. Okay. So there was this lady. I'm not going to say her name. But she was a really weird lady. Their family was weird. Okay. And I was in youth group with her kids. They're just weird. And just listen, no judgment. Does Jesus love them? Yes.
He does.
Like I'm telling you my story. I'm like 17 years old. And she gets up on the stage and she says, for the past, 10 years, I've been so disgusted by my husband.
Oh, no.
So now I'm paying attention. I'm like, okay.
Everybody's attention after that.
Here's the worst part. Her husband and kids were sitting there. Husband did not know. He's hearing this for the first time.
In front of everybody. In front of the church.
And she's like, he disgusts me. He grosses me out. I don't want him touching me. I don't want him talking to me. I can't stand to hear him breathe. And I'm like, well, he's got to breathe, man, you know? And so my friend is sitting next to me and he's like, oh my gosh. And the way the church is, it's kind of shaped kind of like a crescent. So we are sitting on the side where we can see their faces. So we're watching her and we're watching them and we're watching the associate pastor who's running this.
Oh, no.
The senior pastor is sitting on this. This is back in the day when they sat on the stage.
Oh, yeah. Put the chairs out there. Like this was God's holy council that's sitting on stage.
And so this is one of the associate pastors that's right. He's young. This is like his
he's really,
trial by fire right here. You know, like
he's learning some
he's going to quit ministry and go work at Blockbuster when this night is over. He's up there with this microphone. Senior pastor's in the chair and he's mad that this is going on. And then there's always those ladies in the sanctuary that they think that the Lord is moving. They're like, yes, amen. I'm like, this is not the time to
don't
amen.
Encourage it, man.
Barbara, shut up, Barbara.
Yes, do not encourage this conversation.
Me and my friend, we're like cracking up. And then my mom gets my eye and she looks at me like, you shut up. And I'm like, are you hearing what I'm hearing? Like, why are you not laughing? Like, this is crazy. And I was 17. I wasn't looking at, wow, this is their marriage. I'm just thinking, I cannot believe she's saying this.
This is like Jerry Springer at church.
Facts. And I didn't even want to come tonight, but my mom made me and here I am. And I'm glad I'm here. She continues on. She said, there's been so many nights when I was off work and I didn't want to come home. So I went to the movies by myself. He's at home making dinner for his kids.
Wondering why his wife hasn't made it home yet and if she's dead on the side of the road.
And why her paycheck's not better. And she's like watching whatever. And so she's saying all this stuff. And you've got those couple weird ladies that are like amening her. And his face, and like I can look back now and I'm like, it's just so sad.
It breaks your heart, doesn't it?
It does. At the time, I was just like, oh my goodness. But then she's like, and I don't feel that way anymore.
Yep.
And the Lord's just changed my heart. And I remember thinking, and I actually said it to my friend, he may have changed yours, but he's changed his too.
There's hearts changing today. And yours
lots of hearts are changing. Because I promise you, the tables have turned.
Oh my goodness.
It's his turn to feel that way.
Oh.
So that was like, so testimony nights are weird sometimes. I love testimonies.
I do too.
But it's the people who wanted testimonies are about what God has done. It's not confession time. We confuse the two.
And it's not about you.
Facts.
And that's what gets gobbled up in a lot of those moments is they either become confession time, they become oversharing time, or they become it's a me show.
Yes.
And so, man.
Yeah. And you know what's sad is people who said, God, I've healed or I've forgiven. You can tell when they haven't because they're just still real angry and bitter. And they're like, it is. They say my, me. If you want to know if you've healed, go back and listen to yourself.
Yes.
How many times did you say my, me? So what else?
Man,
Tell me something.
like to me, I think about these moments because it's like, I think these moments, I love this conversation because this is the reality of what it's like to do ministry, right?
Yes.
Like we do this moment because it's funny,
Right.
but like there's also this moment, like you better be ready if you say this is what you want to do with people,
Right.
because this is the messiness that comes with,
And there's so many beautiful things
there are
in the midst of all this.
all of these moments still create a lot of beautiful moments, but you are going to have these kind of moments
Yes.
in ministry.
Yes.
It's worth it all. Like
Yeah.
man, say yes to it and do it. Just find a circle of people after you get done with moments like this that you can go decompress with and have a conversation.
For sure.
Right?
For
Because
sure.
these are stories that you
And make sure they're not people in that church. Like, don't turn this into a gossip
No,
bashing people thing. But like, if call me.
call somebody in
I'll be your
another
girl.
state far away from everything that you
And
do.
just don't have to even say names. You can go, you're not going to believe this just happened.
Yeah.
Now, I've 25 years of working with students and kids. So, like, it's always weird, right?
Oh, every time, man.
Yes. My favorite, I was baptizing this little boy that was 10 years old, and he farted or tooted in the baptismal, and the bubbles came up out of his shorts, and he got tickled, and he says it out loud. I just farted. I'm like, that could have stayed between us. But now everybody knows. Thank you.
Okay, so you can talk about kids and being around kids or students. Think the craziest prayer request that a kid has ever said.
I
"Hey, will
love
you?"
little kids
because it's so
they
raw
tell
and
you
honest, isn't it?
everything.
Oh,
Yes.
pray for my mom and dad because on the way to church today, they were yelling and fighting, and my mom slapped my dad in the car before we came in. Do they not?
Yes.
So like details matter, right?
And the mom and dad have no idea
No
that
clue.
this is going on.
But this happens, and I can tell you from personal experience. So Kendra and I were in a season where we felt like it was time to move on from a church, but not in a church setting that was healthy enough to be able to have that conversation with the leader, right?
Right.
And so we actually left for a weekend, just Kendra and I, because they were still little, to go to another church to interview and have conversations with this church. And so Grandma and Grandpa decided they would come up and stay with the grandkids and take care of them. Great. And we'll even take them to church for you. Great. And it was all great until it came time for prayer request time in Skyland's Sunday school. I'm telling you, man. Oh, and the prayer request became pray for my mom and dad because they flew to Alabama to meet with some people about a church. And it's just like, no, but the kids, they don't know any better.
They don't know.
They're unfiltered.
Right.
And they're so
which I love.
pure.
Yeah.
And they're so genuine.
Yes.
And it was a very awkward conversation when we got back with our pastor after he told us, I had a conversation with your daughter's Sunday school teacher. And so, man, there's just those moments when it comes to kids that I love being around.
Mm-hmm.
But mom and dad, just be careful
Yeah.
because they will tell on everything
Yes.
that is happening. And you can tell them not to tell. I don't care.
Right.
When it becomes you telling me not to tell
Well,
or
because
somebody.
when you tell them that prayer is a safe place to talk to God, they are not, that's not to them. They're not telling any secrets there.
It's
They
a
love
safe
you.
place.
You're their mom and dad.
And
They
I want to have a conversation to Jesus because it's a safe place to talk about this stuff.
Right. Right.
So, man,
Okay.
there was that moment.
You're going to remember this because we were both on staff at the same time. There was a little boy that just a giant cowboy hat. He was wearing a belt buckle that weighed more than he did. So he
Yes.
was having a hard time keeping his pants up. Well, he was walking into class and he was upset. So I leaned down and I said, "What's wrong?" And he starts crying. And he said, "My daddy's sick." You remember the story?
Yes.
My daddy's sick. And so I'm thinking, oh gosh, daddy has cancer. Like I go to worst case
Sure.
scenario.
But to be fair, I mean, that's usually what we get from people,
Right.
our worst case scenarios.
And so I was just like, okay. And he was just so upset. He didn't want to go into class. And this kid usually loved to be in class. And so I just said, well, let's pray for daddy. And he said, well, and his back hurts because he's been sleeping on the couch. And I'm like, oh, here it goes. And he said, mommy won't let him sleep in her bed because his toots smell like fish. And I'm on my knees holding the hands of this little cowboy.
Did you pray for his
I sure did.
smelling toots? Yes.
So he was upset because daddy's back hurt because sleeping on the couch was hurting his back. But while his stomach was producing toots that smelled like fish.
Yes.
Mom said, "You're not sleeping in this bed, fish toot boy.
I don't
Sleep
blame
on
her.
the couch." I don't either. And you have to know, Mom and Dad, fantastic marriage, fantastic
Incredible people.
And so I grabbed his little hands and I was like, "Dear Jesus, we just want to pray for Daddy's belly to feel better so that his toots don't smell like fish and he can go back to sleep with Mommy." Amen. And he was fine. He went into class. Okay, service is over. Here comes Mom and Dad. They're like, "Hey." And I'm like, "Hey."
How's your belly feeling, Dad?
How them toots going, right? So like, and that little boy genuinely was not like, "Do you want to hear something funny about my family?"
Not at all.
He wanted God to heal his dad.
That's right.
And Mom and Dad had no clue. And I'm just like, this is... I will never forget, like, telling you about that. I was like, "You're not going to believe what happened yesterday." Like,
those are the moments I live for.
yes.
To come out of those moments of ministry. And part of me wonders, like, I wonder what the face of Jesus looks like when that little kid is telling you to pray for his mommy and dad. Like, I think Jesus is just busting up laughing somewhere in heaven.
Yeah.
I think he loves that little kid and he thinks it's sweet as can be. But I promise you, he is laughing as hard as we are right now as we tell that story because he thinks that's funnier than anything, man.
Yes.
If we were made in his image, I'm convinced he's still laughing at that stuff and thinks it's funny.
Okay. We have a mutual friend named Keaton Rohn. I'm going to throw him under the bus right now.
Dude.
I do
Listen,
too.
his acts, I could sit and listen to him just because of the way he talks.
He could talk about how to make beans and rice. And I'm like, I want to hear what he has to say.
I would too.
So Keaton, I just believe the guy's got just such a call in his life and just an incredible person. Well, this is one of those things that if he made it through this and he stuck with it, he can make it through anything.
Mm-hmm.
He's always been a leader for this particular camp, but he was stepping into church leadership role.
Yeah.
And there was a kid at camp. Now, it's a rodeo Bible camp, but they stay at the church, at this particular church. And Keaton was a leader, and he goes into the bathroom. There's a boy that's in the bathroom with lithium batteries and a saw.
Oh.
Because if you do something with them it does like this underwater explosion or something. Like he could have blown up the church. So Keaton finds him at like 2 a.m. Like, why was he doing this? And Keaton's
an
like,
intrusive thought one in that moment. That's why.
Okay, that's more than an intrusive thought. This kid packed this mess to come to camp. Okay? And Keaton's like, "What are you doing?" And so the kid proceeds to explain to Keaton what will happen. And Keaton's like, "Stop it," you know?
Right now.
And so he goes and gets other people, and I don't think anybody did anything about it, which is great.
Yes.
Fantastic. I think the church never blew up or anything.
It survived.
Yeah.
It still stands.
It still stands. But like the next morning, because I don't stay there, I go home to my bed.
Yeah.
The next morning I'm there and we're getting ready and we've got chapel later that day. And he's like, he's just got this look on his face. And Keaton is like the best human being.
Oh, absolutely.
And he's like, "You're not going to believe what happened to me last night." And I'm like, "Well, you slept on a floor with a bunch of boys. Like, what happened?" And he told me, he's like, "Walked into the bathroom. Standing there at the sink was so-and-so. And he was sawing away at a lithium battery underwater." And I'm like, "What will that do?" He goes, "Blow the church up." Like, just so like, but like.
Matter of fact.
Yeah. And I was just like, welcome to youth ministry.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's what it is to do that.
Yes.
I mean, it's so funny.
Yes. You have any more?
I think that's like, I got some, but I don't think they're made for the public to hear. So I think
really?
Yeah.
Can you take the names out? Because like those are the best. Like who are you gonna get in trouble from?
I'm not gonna.
I'm inviting the crazy right now in this moment
from anybody. So it goes back to the oversharing moment in the prayer requests of the Wednesday night. We're going to sing a little and then we're going to have open mic night and let people make
adults or
requests.
students?
Adults.
Okay.
Adults. And a lady proceeded to go into graphic detail about the most recent visit that she had with her female doctor, and the results that came out of that visit.
Hey, where were you at? Were you on the platform?
I was not. I was 2 rows behind this woman as the pastor is holding the microphone still in front of this woman's mouth. He had.
Why didn't he move it?
Why didn't he?
He brought it on himself.
He did. I totally brought it on himself. And this lady became known in circles as well, nobody would know her because I'll only use the first name. Or became known as Shirley Papsmear because of the details of that conversation that she overshared in that moment in that conversation. And so, I mean, again, it's just these moments where it's like, I understand the heart behind it was maybe well-intentioned to care for somebody, but it's very uncomfortable for everybody else in the room after that moment, and very difficult for people to engage with you in the process of praying for you because of what they just experienced.
Oh.
And Kendra and I had just been married, I mean, maybe a year or two. So like we got married, I was 19 and she was 20. Like, I mean, like trying to wrap your mind around that and then still be kind and compassionate for what just it was too much, man.
I just think that people who are in the medical field have such a unique calling that you can see and hear and know gross things and not be grossed out.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I get so grossed out. So
I thought there were moments like that where I could do it. Like I thought, man, I can hunt. I do all these things. I clean animals. Like those things don't bother me until my wife was having our first child and she was having a C-section.
Oh.
And I thought,
I've got a deer. I can do this.
I want to see what's happening on the other side of this curtain because Kendra was awake. She was talking to me, but she just couldn't feel from the waist down. And I was like, I want to see my son come out until I peeked around the curtain and I see the doctor grabbing my wife's insides and moving them to get to my son. And I realized real fast the room is spinning and I don't feel.
Did you pass out?
I didn't pass out.
That would have been so funny.
But I grabbed the edge of the bed and I just stayed up there with my wife the rest of the time until they brought Nate back around to me and it was all done. Because I realized, man, I thought I could, but I just couldn't stomach it the same way. So
my nephew was like, I wish they would go back to the old days where the men had to sit in the waiting room. And his wife was like, that's not fair. He said, if it was the standard for everybody, you wouldn't be saying that. She said, that's not fair.
That's not fair. Oh man, there we go again, getting everybody.
Yes. He's like, because I have no desire to be in there. Like I just believe there's a baby in there. Just tell me when it's out.
Just tell me when the baby's there and I'll come celebrate, man.
Okay. What about awkward times in ministry? Thank you, Jesus, that I have my entire adult life have not been on staff at a church that allows for specials to be sung.
Oh, been there?
When I was growing up, people brought their tapes. Like they came prepared.
Oh, they had that cassette and it was already dubbed up to the right spot.
But sometimes it wasn't. Go. And so then they used that as an opportunity while the poor sound man didn't know what he was doing to share their testimony.
Because I got a microphone and it's awkward and I'm going to talk while I'm waiting for music.
That's not it. No, that's not it. Not that song, the next one. While he's getting ready for this song, let me tell you. And they would sing and it wasn't special. They were like, does anybody have a special? I do. Here's my tape. And they walked it back. Like I think back to that and it's like, why was that normal?
Why
were we okay with that?
Yes.
You know what it felt brought like? Cassette tapes in their pockets.
Yeah.
So they could sing in front of a room full of people. And it was awful.
And better yet, we just gave these people access to a room full of people to do that. Like it was okay. Like those moments, if you never experienced that growing up in church, the best comparison I can give to you in those moments is the beginning of every season in American Idol. When you get to watch the auditions.
Right. When somebody's mama told them they could sing and they couldn't. That's what many of those specials were like, those people that just couldn't quite cut it, but mama told them they were really good. And so they came in and did this audition. There was always, though, a couple that was just like, my goodness, that was annoying. Oh,
that was amazing.
Killer.
Loved those moments.
But they were wedged in the middle of chaos.
Total chaos.
There was a lady in our church. Do you remember the singer Sandy Patty?
Oh, yeah.
It was like opera.
Yes.
You know?
Yep. I remember.
There was a lady in our church that thought she sang like her. And she sounded like a yodeling goat.
Oh, okay. Yes. I've got this picture in my head now.
Oh, yes. Oh. And she would sing, and then she had this extra neck fat stuff.
Oh, yeah.
That would shake while she sang. Every time there was a special, she sang. And at one time, the pastor said to her, let's give somebody else a chance. And it happened to be on a Sunday night where nobody else wanted the chance. So they had to let her sing again.
Oh, no. No, they did. They gave her another chance. Why do we? I mean, I'm all for a God of second chances, but.
A God of second chances means we don't have to live in condemnation and damnation and eternity in hell. It doesn't mean you get to sing another song at church on Sunday
song
night.
Is like purgatory, isn't it?
Yes. What about, okay, did you guys, I know we're going to have to end this soon, but what about, did y'all ever do Heaven's Gates, Hell's Flames?
Oh man, that was like one of those things that it became like this yearly thing that you were going to do. Now, I never got invited to go to heaven or go to hell. And so I got.
Were you ever in it? Or
I was never invited to be a part of that. I remember. If I did, it was so traumatic. I've blocked it out of my memory and I can't remember it. The parts that always got me were just the performances that they would do and the people that were well-intentioned to volunteer for it, but unqualified to actually run the lights and the sound and everything necessary to actually pull that event off.
Right.
Right. And so you've got a sound guy who's also trying to run lights.
That happened with us.
And yeah. And so, I mean, it's just whatever you were trying to build up to, all of this sudden when the lights come on and they're not supposed to, and Jesus is still trying to climb up on the cross instead of being on the cross.
And the devil's helping him. You're like,
the devil's pushing him up.
He's doing this
Satan,
thing with
get your hands off Jesus' butt. I mean,
right. Okay, so you have those kind of things, and everybody loved that.
Yes.
We also did, and there was a whole era where they would, instead of haunted houses, they would do hell houses.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And it was Halloween night.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, so my friend, her church was doing a hell house.
Okay.
And they were going to, this church had a basement that was also, the basement was the fellowship hall.
Oh. So it really was a hell house.
Well, but the hell house was above the fellowship hall.
Oh, okay.
So we go, she's like, hey guys, I'm acting in this. And will you come? And we were like, well, we were going to go check out some other haunted houses, but I guess we'll come check out the hell house first.
Let's go.
So it was probably one of the most traumatic things I've ever been through. Being chased with a chainsaw. Nope. That was fine. Anytime. Bring it on.
A midget clown.
I can handle it after what I handled at this thing. So we go in, and basically it's kind of like Heaven's Gates, Hell's Flames, but you go into these different scenarios you're walking through.
Okay.
So we go into the abortion room. Awful. Like, what the heck is going on here? We go into all these different scenarios, and then we had gone to Sonic before. I'll never forget this. We'd gone to Sonic. I drank this like Route 44, like ocean water or something, right? So I have to go to the bathroom so bad. And I just told my friends, I was like, hey, I'm going to run to the restroom. I'll be back. Like, I'll meet you in like whatever, like the, the drunk room or whatever, And so I run to the bathroom, come back. I get lost. No. This isn't my church. And I ended up coming out this side door that I guess is probably where the choir or whoever enters onto the stage.
Yeah.
So I'm now in the sanctuary. Let me paint this picture. Sanctuary, full sanctuary, and then they have a balcony.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is right about the time when smoke machines kind of became a thing that people were putting in churches.
Yeah.
And so I'm standing, I'm like, and my first thought is, oh my goodness, they left the smoke machine running. I'm sure this stuff's expensive. Like, what is this all? Yeah. What do I do? Understanding church budget and knowing that no pastor made money. Like my brain goes, my dad would have killed somebody if they'd left this thing running. So I turned to try to go back out the door that I came in. The door's locked. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then all of a sudden, up in the balcony is the devil. I want you to understand, the smoke machine is full. Well, apparently they had multiple smoke machines going. Okay. Yeah. I was like, this is a great smoke machine. This is get the whole sanctuary full. He's up in the balcony. He's like, you. And I said, oh, hey, devil, hold on.
Sorry.
I got disconnected or, separated from my friends. Let me get my friends. Hold your speech and then we'll come in here and you can do it all. He goes, you got separated from your friends because you're in hell. And I'm like, I understand what you're trying to say, but you don't know we're doing this together. I drank Sonic and had to go to the restroom. And I'm telling the devil
your whole life story.
My story. And he's like, you're here for a purpose. I'm like, okay, ooh, I get it. Like already a Christian in real life. Like, hold on. And he just keeps going. So I feel like he's not understanding me. So I move closer to the edge of the stage and out of the smoke comes demons.
No.
I respond. Yes, they did.
No.
I kicked the fire out of a demon. Like not in his head, but like in his shoulder neck area. Like, I don't know. Did his head pop off? I don't care. Like it freaked me out and I'm screaming. And so when I kicked him, now all of a sudden Satan goes back to being Henry or whatever his name. He's like, hey, this is just I was like, I told you to let me get my friends. And I'm freaking out. So finally the door opens and I get out and my friends are like, are we supposed to go in there? I'm like, you do not, that's hell. You don't want to go to hell.
Don't do it.
It's awful. So then we get through the very end, we come to Jesus. They found the smallest man, puniest man.
To play him?
Yes. And he's standing there with his white robe, his purple beauty queen sash, and he's got two little dots drawn on his hand. And he's like, eternity is with me. And I'm like, Satan was like 6'2", and his demons all easy are in the gym every day.
Yeah.
Why is Jesus the loser in the picture here?
Come on. We can do better than that.
And then they were like, would you like to come downstairs for chili? I'm like, no, I'm not going to your chili. No, it was the worst. So we all leave. And my friend was like, why did you guys leave early? And I was like, your church is lame.
It's crazy.
That was the weirdest. Your sanctuary was hell. I got stuff. She was like, were you the one that kicked the demon? I'm like, yeah, and I'd do it again. Like, what the heck is going on?
Don't touch me when I get in there.
They say in a lot of those haunted houses, you're not supposed to let, which they probably learned that from that experience.
They probably did. It became the one that passed on from
But that didn't make anybody like that. Why did churches?
Do you think that was effective?
No,
I don't.
Because it scares people into, that's not relationship.
It creates a fear-based version of following Jesus.
Which is not following Jesus. It's just, I don't want to go to hell.
I'm scared, and so I'm going to choose this because I don't want to go there.
Well, the problem is we want to save people to heaven, not to Jesus.
Come on.
And you can save people to heaven when you scare them with hell, but there's no Jesus relationship at all.
You want to know when you know that you've scared somebody or saved somebody to heaven instead of Jesus? I think your husband gets credit for this. This is maybe a conversation we've had at some point, but he said, he was talking about how somebody had proposed a question one time about if you got to heaven and Jesus wasn't there, would you still want to be there?
Yeah, we were at a conference.
Maybe Phil that's what it was and having that conversation.
I remember you and Phil having this conversation.
Oh, that's so good because it helps you understand, man, am I leading people to follow Jesus or am I simply trying to get people into a place called heaven?
Well, we were at a pastor's conference and it was a room full of pastors.
Yeah.
And he said, the man speaking said, every single one of you think your mind knows the answer should be no.
Yeah.
But the fact is your heart is yes, because all of your life you've preached. If you were to die tonight, do you know where you would spend eternity?
Yeah.
And it's never about if you were to die, do you know where you would spend eternity? It should be, do you know with whom you would spend eternity? Yeah. And it rocked our world.
Yeah, that is. That's a good one.
But those days of Heaven's Gates, Hell's Flames,
please stop.
Hell Houses.
Yeah, don't do it.
The power team.
Yeah. No.
Didn't your son
My son thought it was so cool because he got a bat that the power team broke over their knees. And he was just like, Dad, they broke a bat. And I wanted to get saved all at the same time. And so it's like, you're already saved. So you don't need to do it again just because he broke a bat and then told you're going to go to hell and then go to heaven if you ask Jesus into your heart.
And he signed it with a Sharpie.
He did. He may still have it. I don't even know if he still has it, but we had one in his room.
Please find out.
We got to find out. I got to have Kendra and Nate go on a mission to see if I can find a picture of the broken bat.
If not, let's go buy a wooden bat and break, not over my knee, but let's break it over like a brick or something. And then
you can sign it.
Have Phil sign it. And then be like, this is for you, Nate. Merry Christmas.
Oh, I know somebody's probably out there right now mad that we're talking about this stuff, but hey, it's just the reality. Like, come on, church.
But you know what? And to say all this, in the middle of all of the weird crazy, there was still some precious
there were
things
some
that
good
happened.
things that happened. Yep.
You know, and there was
that's the lesson to walk away from even one of these funny moments is in spite of all that, good things still happen.
Yes.
So don't let that stuff keep you from it. Just make it an extra shot on a podcast somewhere and have some fun with it.
And if you're one of the people that said too much and did too much, learn your audience.
That's right. Read the room,
when
baby.
When people are looking at you like, holy cow, shut up.
Yeah.
Maybe shut up.
When they stop looking you in the face after that, it's probably time to stop giving details.
Don't give details.
Yeah, just stop. Just pray for me. Thank you.
That's it.
That's it. Unspoken request.
Don't bother your praise hand. Hey, Jason, thanks for
having me.
Thanks for joining us for this extra shot.
So much fun.
I can't wait till we can do this again.
Me too. We got to make it happen.
All right. Talk to you later.
All right.